You know, with over 5,000 records in my collection, not all of them are going to be blockbusters. Some are kind of obscure, but worth a listen. And so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to focus on 3 of the albums today and tell you the story behind the concert where I saw these 3 bands. Interested? Okay, let's drop the needle. I've told you I was a disc jockey at KPPC in Los Angeles, but prior to that, when I was at school at UCLA, I worked for the radio station there. And I heard that there was going to be a big rock show in Chicago featuring 3 up-and-coming acts, and they just all had new albums out. So I went to the program director and I said, hey, my parents live in Chicago. This happens during spring break. I was going to go home anyway. Why don't you give me a tape recorder, cover a little bit of my time, and I'll go and record the bands and talk to the bands. We'll do interviews for the radio station. And he said, fine. So I packed up my recorder and flew back to Chicago. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to look at those 3 bands that played at that show and discuss their albums. The first band and album we're going to look at is Aorta. They were from Chicago, and they were one of the opening acts on the bill. Their big claim to fame actually came before they called themselves Aorta and released this rather obscure album. Before that, they created a fictitious group which recorded 1 song. They called themselves Max Frost and the Troopers, and the song was The Shape of Things to Come, which was used in the movie Wild in the Streets. It's probably a lot more famous than the Aorta album, actually. This is a strange album. They're a psychedelic band. It starts with a song called Main Vein that reappears 3 more times in different forms on the record. It's a gatefold album whose inside shows a human heart in all the lyrics. It's definitely a strange album, but check out Heart Attack, Strange, and the very weird Ode to Missy Missopictics, or something like that. It's released on Columbia, and you can find it on eBay from $12.99 to $40. The second act on the bill was a new group called Illinois Speed Press. One of the members was Cal David, who had just left Aorta to form Illinois Speed Press with Paul Cotton, who would later join Poco. The Illinois Speed Press first album came out in 1969. The main feature of this mix of rock and roll, soul, and country was its twin lead guitar sounds. Interestingly, the album was produced by James William Guerciero, who made his name producing the Buckinghams, Chicago, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. The album features a number of good songs written by Cal David and Paul Cotton. They released a second album called Duet, featuring just Paul and Cal. Check out an early version of Bad Weather on this record, which Paul Cotton would later record and have a hit with Poco. The third act at the show was a band called The Flock. The Flock was a 7-member band with the typical guitar, bass, and drum lineup, but uniquely fronted by a violin and augmented by 2 tenor saxes and a trumpet. Their debut album had a big push from Columbia and even included liner notes from the blues great John Mayall. He says, 2 months ago I was telling the gentlemen of the British press that The Flock was the best band I'd heard in America. I wish them all the luck they deserve. Unfortunately, the album did not sell well. However, there are some great tracks on this debut album, and one that sticks out is Tired of Waiting. Yep, that's the same song that Ray Davies of the Kinks wrote, and the Kinks had a big hit with. Admittedly, the Flock's rendition is a bit different, but I'm still amazed that they claim writing credits on the label. Their first album was influenced by Miles Davis, and was moved further into jazz than either Chicago or Blood, Sweat, and Tears. The album did not sell well, and after a second album, The Flock flew apart. This album is for those who want to hear how the Chicago sound developed. You can find it on eBay for $8.88. Jerry Goodman left The Flock and became an integral part of the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Well, there you have it. 3 Chicago bands with 3 totally different sounds and 3 totally different albums. It was a memorable concert. Oh, and by the way, what happened to my interviews? Well, They never got played on the radio, and those tapes are lost. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out. Thanks for watching. Keep it rockin'. Most of the albums that I talk about can be found at your local vinyl store or on eBay. Individual songs most likely are on Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music, or even some on YouTube.